The only light is a sliver of moon, fractured by the humid ancient air of the Australian top end. The heat is suffocating, a wet blanket woven from the breath of the wilderness. A silence so profound it aches. Then, a sudden, violent sound. Not a roar, not a scream, it's the sound of mighty water being swallowed. A dense, impossible churn, like a submerged engine revving once, and then nothing. Beneath the surface of the sandy billabong, an abyss of black, warm water. Something precious is already being dragged into the dark. Something is slipping away. The air thickens with the smell of wet earth and primal dread. We are watching a ghost story happen in real time. 7 figures stand or float in the murky water, their laughter still echoing off the paperbark trees. They don't know the calculus has just changed. They don't know that 4.2 meters of cold, ancient muscle has just closed an invisible distance. They are suspended between life and oblivion. One moment they were sharing a carefree late-night adventure. The next, a shadow the size of a small car has performed a single, perfect, deadly vanishing act. The high-stakes imagery is complete. The predator is invisible. The victim is already gone. The witnesses, they are still smiling. Something terrible has already happened, and the nightmare is only just beginning. This is the story of Isabel von Jordan.
So many hopes and dreams for the future.
A traveler, a daughter, a sister. She came to Australia searching for freedom, for the kind of vibrant, untamed wilderness that whispers tales of true adventure. She found it in the heart of the Northern Territory, Crocodile National Park. But there is a razor's edge between adventure and absolute folly. In this land, the line between beauty and mortal danger is almost invisible, often defined by nothing more than a few inches of water or a single fatal choice. We tell ourselves we can conquer the wild. We believe our maps, our guides, our modern technology can somehow tame the ancient perfect predators that have ruled this earth for 90 million years. This belief, this hubris cost Isabel her life. It cost her sister her peace, and it exposed a terrifying truth. In the domain of the saltwater crocodile, human life is nothing more than a brief, warm meal. Tonight we unravel the sequence of errors, of warnings ignored, of gross negligence that led a 23-year-old tourist to her death. We ask, how could a night swim in a known crocodile habitat even be suggested? And what does it take for human beings to finally respect the ancient, brutal rules of the Australian bush? Isabel von Jordan was not a reckless soul. She was methodical, bright, a university student from Germany, planning a future that suddenly stretched before her, full of possibility. She was 23 years old, traveling across the world with her older sister, Stephanie. This trip was meant to be a bonding experience, a memory they would cherish for the rest of their lives. Their bond was close. Stephanie, 2 years Isabel's senior, was the slightly more cautious one. But on the road, in the heady atmosphere of sun, dust, and freedom, they fed off each other's excitement. When they signed up for the overland tour through Crocodile, they were chasing the iconic Australian dream. The red dirt, the billabongs, the raw, untamed landscape. They were paying customers, placing their absolute trust in the man hired to protect and guide them, Glenn Robles. Robles was a quintessential tour operator, experienced, rugged, deeply familiar with the region, or so his credentials claimed. He had been running tours through the territory for years, guiding international tourists eager to scratch beneath the surface of the glossy brochures. His job was simple: facilitate the adventure, manage the risk. In Crocodile, managing risk means one thing above all others: managing crocodiles. But something had shifted in Robles's judgment. Perhaps it was familiarity breeding contempt. Perhaps it was a desire to give his clients a unique experience. Whatever the reason, the core contract of trust between a guide and his charges was about to be catastrophically broken. For the sisters, the days had been perfect. Dusty drives, stunning waterfalls, and the quiet camaraderie of fellow travelers. They had seen the warning signs, the ubiquitous yellow triangles posted throughout the park. Danger. Crocodiles. They knew this was crocodile country, but they believed the guide knew the safe places. They believed the guide was their final, unbreakable barrier to the wild. They were about to learn that sometimes the greatest danger doesn't lurk in the water, but in the poor judgment of a man. Let us now introduce the second, silent protagonist of this tragedy, the saltwater crocodile, Crocodilus porosus, the undisputed apex predator of its domain. This is not a small reptile. The creature that stalked the sandy billabong that night was later estimated to be a massive 4.2 meters, nearly 14 feet, long and weighed close to 400 kilograms, 882 pounds. This size places it firmly in the category of man-eater. Their behavior is an evolutionary marvel of efficiency. They are ambush hunters. They float, camouflaged perfectly by the muddy water and the starlight reflection. They are capable of lying in wait for hours, sometimes days, conserving energy. Their metabolism is slow, their patience infinite. When they strike, it's an explosion of power. The initial lunge is driven by their massive tail, launching the body from the water with incomprehensible speed. Their jaws clamp down with the greatest known bite force of any animal on Earth, tens of thousands of pounds per square inch. The method is always the same: capture, then the madrai, death roll. A violent, sustained spin designed to disorient, drown, and dismember the prey. Crucially, in Kakadu, crocodiles are not an occasional risk. They are the permanent residents. They are protected, they are numerous, and they are always hungry. The warnings posted everywhere, by park rangers, by decades of documented attacks, are not suggestions. They are absolute mandates for survival. They state clearly, stay out of the water. But that night, those mandates were dismissed. The afternoon leading up to the disaster was typical of an outback tour: hot, dusty, exhausting, and followed by the promise of relaxation. The group arrived at the sandy billabong area, a location infamous for its population of large salties. The Park Service had done its job. The area was clearly marked. Everyone knew the risk. But as the tropical night settled, cooling the beer and deepening the silence, Glenn Robles made the unthinkable suggestion. "The water feels great," he might have said. "Let's go for a quick dip to cool off. Just stay close to the sandbar." The psychology is insidious. A group dynamic takes over. Tourists look to the expert. If the guide, the man who lives and breathes this environment, says it's okay, then surely it must be an unwritten rule. Danger for the novices, but safe for those who know the spot. 7 people bought the lie. 7 people stepped across the invisible line from tourist to prey. Stephanie and Isabel, their laughter light and free, waded in. The water was waist-deep, warm, inviting. It felt safe. The moon was a faint guide. But the most chilling moment came immediately after. Tour guide Glenn Robles, the man who had ordered them into the danger zone, didn't stay. He simply left the immediate area, walking back towards the campsite, leaving the 7 swimmers alone, isolated, and completely vulnerable. He had created the perfect hunting ground, given the predator the perfect opportunity, and removed the only source of authority that might have prevented the tragedy. It wasn't just a lapse in judgment. It was a profound criminal failure of duty. The stage was set. The hunters were gone. The prey were swimming. The killer was waiting. 10:30 p.m. The billabong. The swimmers were clustered near the sandbar, talking quietly. Isabel and Stephanie were close. They felt the current, the movement of the water. In the complete darkness, sensory details become magnified. The cool silkiness of the water on their skin, the sound of crickets, the rustling of reeds. Then the sensation. One of the other group members, a woman identified only as a British tourist, felt it first. A sudden, cold, hard brush against her legs, moving with incredible force. Inner monologue, Stephanie van Jordan. "It felt like something knocked into us. A log, maybe?" But it was too fast. It was a coldness that didn't belong in the warm water. I thought, what was that? Almost simultaneously, the laughter stopped. A sound cut through the air. It wasn't the blood-curdling scream of a horror film. It was shorter, more confused, more like a sharp, choked yelp. A single burst of pure surprise, immediately cut off. Some of the group, still joking, dismissed it. "Oh, Isabel's just skylarking," someone called out. They believed she was playing a prank, ducking under the water to scare them. But Stephanie knew. That was the sound of her sister's voice, but stripped of all its usual playful rhythm. It was a sound of shock, not fun. They waited. The silence returned, now laced with an edge of cold dread. Inner monologue, Stephanie von Jordan. I called her name. "Isabel, stop playing. Come up." Only the dark water answered. The water didn't ripple, it didn't splash, it just absorbed her. 5, 10, 20 seconds passed. The truth began to crystallize, slow and horrific. This wasn't a joke. Stephanie began to panic, wading forward, hands desperately sweeping the black water. Where is she? She felt nothing but the silt and the endless, terrifying space beneath the surface. The group finally scrambled back to the sandbar, wet and shaking. The count was wrong. 6 figures stood there, breathing heavily. Isabel was gone. The realization hit like a physical blow. The shouts became real screams, not of fear, but of alarm. "Isabel is missing, we need help." The guide, Robles, who had only been moments away, was alerted. He returned to a scene of sheer terror. The carefree adventure had instantly become a desperate, impossible search mission. The attack had lasted less than a second. The disappearance was total. The silence that followed was the sound of the perfect predator going back to its meal. The alarm was raised, shattering the peace of the national park. But time was not on their side. The nearest real help, park rangers, police, emergency services, was a long, difficult drive away. The initial responders were the guides and the terrified remaining group. But what could they do? Wade back into the water where Isabel vanished. The terror of being the next victim was paralyzing. Police were notified. Park rangers, the true experts in this deadly environment, mobilized immediately. They knew exactly what had happened. They knew the signature of the attack. The search was not for a missing person. It was a recovery operation. The rangers arrived with specialized lighting and grimly with firearms. They began to patrol the billabong, their beams cutting through the heavy mist. At approximately 4 a.m., the lights caught it. A massive, unmistakable shadow near the edge of the water. The colossal shape of a saltwater crocodile, bloated and sluggish. It was still in the vicinity. The decision was immediate, necessary, and brutal. The rangers destroyed the animal, killing the 4.2-meter reptile with precision shots. The recovery that followed was heartbreaking. The crocodile's carcass was examined, and within it the horrific confirmation: Isabel von Jordan. Her body was recovered shortly afterward, tragically ending the night of terror. The official cause of death was later confirmed: drowning during the course of a crocodile attack. The sheer force of the initial strike, followed by the immediate dive and the drowning process, had ended her life almost instantaneously. The witnesses, the 6 others who shared the water with her sister, were left shattered. They all gave statements, detailing the guide's instructions, the fleeting touch of the creature, and the single chilling yelp that had broken the silence before Isabel vanished forever. Stephanie, Isabel's sister, was left with a scar far deeper than any tooth mark. The agonizing memory of calling her sister's name into the darkness and hearing only the lapping water. The tragedy of Isabel von Jordan exploded onto the international media landscape. A beautiful young German student killed by a massive crocodile in a world-famous national park. The story was instant, gruesome headline fodder. But the media interest quickly focused on the critical question: why? The answers came swiftly from the coroner's inquest. The inquest examined the events, the guide's actions, and the park's warnings. The findings were not merely critical. They were damning. Coroner Greg Kavanaugh ruled that the tour guide, Glenn Robles, was responsible for a failure of duty that was inexplicable, indefensible, and grossly negligent. The phrase echoed around the world: inexplicable, indefensible, grossly negligent. Robles had suggested a swim in a known, designated habitat for massive protected man-eating predators. He had then abandoned his charges. The coroner stated that the risk was obvious and entirely avoidable. The legal consequences followed. Glenn Robles was charged with making a dangerous omission that caused Isabel's death. He eventually pleaded guilty, avoiding a full trial but admitting his catastrophic error. In 2003, he was given a 3-year suspended prison sentence. He was essentially given a pass on incarceration, but his life and career were destroyed, forever stained by the death of Isabel. The public reaction was a mixture of outrage and a grim, fatalistic understanding of the Australian wilderness. Tourists were horrified that a guided tour could lead to such a risk. Locals nodded, reiterating the oldest rule of the territory: never, ever trust the water. The tragedy forced a massive review of safety standards in Crocodile. Park officials and tour operators were compelled to reinforce the no-swimming rule with absolute finality. The park was forced to put up even more explicit, even more terrifying signage. The cost was high, paid in the life of a young woman who simply trusted the wrong person. Final moral reflection or chilling last line. The story of Isabel von Jordan is a story not just about a crocodile, but about the thin veil of control we imagine we have over the natural world. Isabel came to a land where ancient rules are still enforced. She paid her money, signed up for the adventure, and stepped into the care of an experienced professional. She did everything right except one thing. She trusted a man who failed to respect the scale of the danger. The crocodile did what crocodiles do. It saw a warm body in the water at night, and it attacked. It was not malicious. It was merely fulfilling a 90-million-year-old imperative. The blame rests entirely on the human failure to heed the warnings. Warnings written in plain English, warned by decades of history, and warned by the sheer cold reality of the predator's profile. We are left with the crushing sadness of a life cut short, a family forever broken, and the memory of a single terrible moment. The sound of a sister's choked yelp swallowed by the darkness. And if you ever find yourself in the top end, standing beside the still, inviting waters of a beautiful, terrifying billabong, look closely at the surface. Listen to the silence.